quickly so I don't forget that part of it. And then we should be good to go. Okay. Getting on live. Uh-oh. Hold on, maybe I have to redo this. Waiting for live video. Okay, let me try this again. Maybe I didn't like that I hit record and maybe it.
No problem.
Okay. Okay, all right, let's try this again. Okay, hit the button in 1, 2, 3. All right, everyone. Hello. We are live today. I am so excited, everyone, to bring you a special guest on this Facebook Live. I have Dana Dunford here with Hemlane. Hi, Dana. How are you?
Hi, Jennifer. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. So everyone, Dana is here to talk to us about remote landlording. We have so many of you in the group that are investing in markets outside of your home market and investing in areas where it makes sense. And so I'm really excited to have Dana here. I first learned about Hemlane from some other members in the group, Jess and Tyler McHugh. And they had told me about this solution when I was looking for kind of a hybrid between self-management and property management. So of course, I've been investing since 2007. Primarily, my husband and I were investing in Western Washington, and we're doing a self-management. But when we started to travel abroad, specifically when we went on a 10-week trip to Southeast Asia, we were kind of wondering what it would look like to self-manage and potentially be in another country. And so I was really excited to learn about Hemlane, immediately signed on and used a leasing agent to actually place tenants in one of our new construction buildings. And that went fantastic. And so I know a lot of you are kind of thinking about, how you can do something similar. And so again, just really excited to have Dana here. A little bit about Dana and Hemlane specifically. So Dana is the CEO of Hemlane. Hemlane offers an all-in-one platform that provides an automated and more passive solution to property management. Hemlane is available in all 50 states. So for investors that are looking, again, to invest remotely, but don't necessarily have boots on the ground, Hemlane is a fantastic solution for that because they have leasing agents, they have access to maintenance people that can help out handling the maintenance. And so they also offer, I had to take notes here, Dana, because you guys offer so many different solutions. You offer marketing and tenant placement, again, maintenance, rent collection, document storage, maintenance coordination. And then also, I think one thing that's really unique is for real estate agents that want to offer a property management solution to their clients, Hemlane can be a fantastic solution for you. So again, Dana, thank you so much for being here on this call today. I'd like to actually start, Dana, and I'd love to get an idea of what gave you the idea and the goal to create Hemlane and solve a lot of these issues that landlords have.
Yeah, definitely. And as you were talking about Southeast Asia and traveling there, I'm sure most people on this call were like, oh, that sounds good. How do I go there? I think really what it came down to was so my family has real estate investments and was basically looking at ways to manage them. And looking in the market, what we discovered was there were really only two solutions. It was everything do it yourself or hire a full service property manager. I think both solutions are fantastic if that's exactly what you want. But in looking at the market, 73% of real estate investors don't use a traditional property manager. So 73% are doing some sort of self-management. And on top of that, every time I spoke with friends, including my co-founder, he's got properties in Georgia and Florida and San Francisco as well. Every time we spoke about it, it was all these headaches of like, oh gosh, it takes so long to do this. Oh, wait, I have to keep my phone on. Oh, I'm in a different country and there's a time zone change. And at 2 a.m. I got woken up and it was just because the tenant had some question that was not an emergency, right? And it was, how do you provide something where it's a plug and play, right? Like I think of it as a la carte. How do I pick what I want? And everyone should pick technology, right? Technology will automate you and it's cheaper than your time and you doing anything. So like, I think technology is like the software as a service is like the first part of it. But then if you want something else like a leasing agent or someone to help with repair coordination, you can get it, but you're not locked into an annual contract for it. You're not locked into here's the service professionals you have to use. Here's the handyman you have to use because it's our relationship. No, you have your own. Great. We'll give them a call. A much more flexible solution to property management. I found that was actually what mass market was looking for. That's what most real estate investors want. And what's fantastic about it is it opens up your opportunity for investment. I mean, I don't recommend buying 10 properties in 10 different locations. I definitely think there's something to be said about having some sort of concentration in certain areas. But I think it's fantastic for you to be able to say, oh, wow, Huntsville, Alabama looks like a great place to invest right now. Let me go and look at it, knowing that you can still use the same solution, have everything on one platform. You get to have that power and control over it without being restricted because, hey, I don't have local support there. I don't have the experts there. So I think that was really important. And that was really what came to Hemlane. And then a lot of when people say like, how did you come up with the idea and stuff like that? A lot of additional features we've added was listening to customers, talking to leasing agents, understanding what would provide you with a 5-star experience, and then continuing to iterate on that, which is what we're doing every day.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, Dana, I love that you mentioned that it's an all-in-one and one platform. I have real estate in 7 different markets. And so sometimes, managing 7 different logins, some of the property managers use AppFolio, some use Buildium, some use their own solution. And to be honest, it can be a lot to manage. We're still managing property managers. And so having an all-in-one solution where everything can be with one login, you can review your entire portfolio is such a benefit to so many investors, and especially investors that want to have more of an active role in their investments, but not having to deal with the 2 a.m. calls like you had mentioned, and also feeling maybe not sure about getting into a market if they don't have local boots on the ground. So I love that you are offering this solution to investors. So I think of Hemlane as kind of a hybrid. So kind of the gap between self-management and traditional property management. So can you explain specifically what is the difference that an investor would be getting using Hemlane versus hiring a traditional property manager?
Yeah, so there's a couple of main where there's a lot of differences, but there's a couple of main things. The first one is the transparency and controls. So, for example, rent collection is sent 100% to you. Like 100% of the rent goes to you in late fees. So if a tenant is late, we send out the automatic late notices, but you get 100% of those fees, and so you have that control. Which I think is very important. On the maintenance side of maintenance and repair coordination, we don't upcharge on any of those. When you see an invoice, it's the service professional's invoice. And some property managers have the same, like no upcharges. I think it's the best way to go, for sure. But then you get to pick and choose if you want to use our list of service professionals or if you want to list your own. And you can basically go through and assign an order of here's the first plumber, here's second, or just call out yours. So you can have a much more passive or an active role is the main difference. And then we don't hold a reserve. So usually a property manager holds the rent and then uses that to pay the invoices to the service professionals. We don't, we just charge you at point of service. And obviously making sure the work's been done, et cetera, you would see the invoice and we would charge the account you have on file for that. So you don't hold a reserve at all with Hemlane. So those are some of the key differences. People ask me how involved you have to be in property management on Hemlane. Like, is this going to be a lot of work? Anything that is urgent that needs to be done right away, you won't have to be involved in because Hemlane is. And if we need to give you a call for approval because it's over your threshold, say it is an air conditioner and the Freon's going to cost more than the $200 threshold that you have, we're going to give you a call. Right. But a property manager would do the same. So people say, oh, is it going to be a lot more? It's not. There are some things that you do in the system like lease decisions. So if a tenant says, I want a pet, you would make that and respond to the tenant in the system. So there's a little bit more of that versus the traditional approach. We found a lot of investors like that. They want to be a little bit more involved in those lease decisions because again, we're acting on behalf of you. You are the manager. We empower you to become that in the platform, which I think is a huge difference. So I'd say those are the main differences. Again, from a solution perspective, I always tell people it's what works best for you. What is the best solution for you? And it's not a one size fits all in property management, which is why we love that offering a new solution, an alternative, is a great way to just provide owners with what they want in today's market.
I noticed too, you have another feature as part of that maintenance coordination where there's kind of a dialogue with the tenant. So if the tenant says, for example, they're having electrical issues, then there's going to be a conversation related to checking the GFCIs and kind of going through some, almost like FAQs with the tenants before just sending out an electrician. And so I, as an investor, can really appreciate that because sometimes it's a bit frustrating when, a repair comes in and it's something really simple that the tenant could have troubleshooted by themselves. So I love that feature.
Yeah, and that just keeps getting better. Like even troubleshooting doorbells and things that having that because it's consistent across every household. Now, of course, you have to ask what kind of doorbell it is and all this stuff, but we're just getting better with the troubleshooting. And it's interesting, a professional real estate investor like yourself will really, Jennifer, understand the value of, I do not want to pay a $68 service call fee. I want to make sure that this troubleshooting has happened. It's funny, we'll have investors, new investors come on to Hemlane and a tenant puts in a request and we're troubleshooting and we say, we're going to follow up with you again tomorrow if we don't hear, but these are the steps you need to take, blah, 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 blah. We don't hear back. We give the tenant a call. We log all of it. And the owner says, well, why don't we just send out an electrician for it? And then sure enough, next thing that comes in is the tenant's like, oh, I just did that and that worked. No problem. Close this request. And it was then the owner realizes that value of, oh, wow, you just physically saved money on my bottom line. And service professionals are expensive and there's a reason for it. It's not like you can get a handyman out of your property for $15 an hour, which that just doesn't happen anymore these days with increased costs and liability and things like that. And so it is really important to make sure that tenants know what their responsibilities are with the troubleshooting. And then some of it gets more complex into liability. And we really make sure that when we're having the tenant do something, there's not a liability. So a light bulb, if it's hey, replace the light bulb, it's okay, well, when did they move in? Did they just move in? Because that's our responsibility, the leasing agent. Or how high is the ceiling? If it's a 20-foot ceiling, don't put your tenant on a ladder. If they fall off, you could get sued for that. And so there's certain things that make it much more complex, but also much more exciting on our side to continue to have those trees and algorithms and stuff for the repair coordinators to follow.
And I think, with over 9,100 units under management, getting some consistency across portfolios with these FAQs. And so again, you can kind of get an idea of what some common, themes are related to these repairs and handle those appropriately. So I love that.
Oh yeah, the data is really interesting. Like what percentage of requests are having to do with HVAC versus plumbing versus pest control, all these different things. We take all that data into account. And then how do we make sure that we're providing a great experience for the tenant right up front, troubleshooting, things like that. Yeah.
And then Dana, how do you handle it when it's a tenant damage, right? So for example, I recently received a call and the dishwasher wasn't working, and it turns out that the tenant had flushed down some rocks from a fish tank and had kind of got into the dishwasher, and so that was we determined that was a repair that the tenant was responsible for. Is that part of this as well? Is there some determination on who caused the damage and who pays for it?
Yeah, we always do that. So we always ask for a root cause of what happened. Yep. Why did it happen, right? And do that. I mean, we had one, I think this weekend, where the tenant said the garage door is not working, and it's like very clear. They went out in the tenant's car, some car, maybe it wasn't the tenant's, but tenant responsibility, went straight into the garage door. That is clearly not a bill that the owner should be paying. That's definitely the tenant. And so what we do is we actually use that invoice, which we ask for what happened, how to prevent in the future, everything in there to basically say, listen, this is your responsibility. Also, when the tenant puts in the request, they agree to those terms. So they agree, if this is our responsibility and it was something that was tenant damaged, per the lease agreement, we'll be responsible for it. Same with service call no-shows. We also have in there that, hey, if you've told a service professional that you'll be on site and you forget about your appointment. By the way, we've never had this problem with COVID. It was before COVID, but and you said you'd be on site and you're not, then that service call is going to be billed back to you if they decide to charge it. And tenants like to see that upfront so they know what their expectations are. The worst thing for them is to say, wait, you're charging me for that? I had no idea. Yeah. Like a lot of it has to do with communication from that perspective.
Absolutely. And then let's talk about lease agreements and local landlord-tenant laws. So for an investor like myself that owns in 7 different markets, does Hemlane have a solution for someone like me that wouldn't necessarily know the landlord-tenant laws in all of the different areas that I'm in?
Yeah, so there's state as well as county laws, and that's where you have to really become an expert. So Hemlane definitely provides resources for state-specific lease agreements. But for example, I know, Jennifer, you're usually in Seattle, but traveling around now. Seattle is not a place where you'd use the state-specific lease. Same with where I am in San Francisco. I would not recommend a state-specific lease. You need the San Francisco Apartment Association lease. That's it. That's the best one to use. And so really, if you need a state level lease, we'll provide that. If you need a very specific county one, or you're working with one of the leasing agents on our platform, they're already going to have the best leases. That's part of the criteria that we go through with them to understand what leases they're using and what are the best. That's actually a huge advantage to using a leasing agent. A lot of people ask, should I be using a leasing agent? I mean, a lot of the realtor association leases, they have in-house legal teams that 100% focus on that. And I always get nervous when I hear, and I try to prevent it, of a real estate investor or landlord saying, I went online and I got a free lease. And I'm like, you got a what? The liability and the cost associated with that, it's just not worth it. So really make sure that you have a very concrete lease, even if you need a lawyer. And if you use a lawyer, make sure it's not hourly based, make sure it's flat rate based. Yeah. Have them review the lease and a local real estate attorney. Ask property managers, who's the best local real estate attorney. Use them to make sure you have a rock solid lease. That's part of the reason in the platform that people say, oh, well, do you just provide one for everyone? And it's like, well, everything is so specifically different. It would be actually an injustice to do that and say, oh, just use the state specific lease. That's not always the case, especially Chicago, all these areas where there are laws that are different at the state and county level.
Well, and there's also addendums related to pet addendums that for properties that are built prior to 1978. Then you have the lease or the lead-based
Lead-based. Yep.
addendum,
Yep.
right? So Dana, how much training, if any, are provided to these leasing agents in all of the different markets that you're in?
Yeah, so when we screen leasing agents, we look for ones who are already subject matter experts on it. Don't get me wrong, we have all the resources we send them about leasing, but we don't want their first time of leasing to be through us, right? Like that's where I think there's a combination of understanding fair housing, understanding background and credit checks, understanding applications, understanding leases that yes, you can learn from us. Don't get me wrong. We provide it to our landlords, we provide it to our leasing agents. However, there's a lot of things you learn on the job. It's just like any job. You take someone and it's their first time in the position, they're not going to be the best at it, right? It's going to take time. And so we look for agents who are experienced. They go through over 20 plus leases a year. They've been doing this for 3+ years. Certain things that we're looking for, and then also understanding satisfactions, rankings, reviews. And then we built that up in our system. So every time an owner is matched with a leasing agent, at the end, we ask the owner, we say, we're not going to tell the leasing agent, not going to make this public. You let us know exactly how it went. Did you feel like, the leasing went well? Was it too slow? And then we put that into the back end of the system. Again, we don't share it out. I think it's a disservice to the agent as well as to, we wouldn't get as honest of feedback. And then we take that into account. So typically when we hear an agent who gets 5 stars, this person was a rock star, we love them. Of course, they're going to be the first person we introduce to every other owner going forward. And the more data that we have, even better. And so we're logging that all in the system and we're not sharing it, in part because of we want that honesty. Yelp is a terrible place to look for property management or leasing agents. It's usually a lot of just angry people reaming. And for us, we want both the pros and the cons to know exactly who this leasing agent is. Who are they going to fit with? We've had some cases where a leasing agent gets 5 stars from one person and 1 from another. What's the difference in personality that made that happen? How do we match them better with the people that they're going to match very well with? Now that's an extreme case, but for the most part, we take all those reviews into account and really do a good selection up front to reduce the friction later on and any sort of emotion that goes into the management and leasing.
Amazing. And then what solution might Hemlane solve for an investor that is in the due diligence stage of a property? And maybe it's a new market and they're unsure of rents, it's a vacant property. Would they engage that leasing agent while they're under contract to verify rents and make sure that the property makes sense? Or is the investor to do their own due diligence on fair market rents and then put the property into Hemlane after they've closed? What's the best way for an investor to do that?
Yeah, so for rent estimates, there's 2 different ways we do it. We have data where we can pull reports for you and share those with you. We also have the leasing agents to give a second opinion of what they think it can rent for. And then we track, did it actually rent for that amount, right? So we definitely do that. The one thing you have to be worried about in most markets, not all markets, is kind of dual agency and 2 agents get involved. So if they're purchasing a property through a different real estate agent, and our agent is suddenly going over and doing inspections and saying, no, I don't think it should rent for that. I think it should rent for this. There's a conflict there of having 2 agents involved and one without a contract yet, right? Because you haven't purchased the property. So we do just caution on that of like, depending on what market you're in, depending on when that agent can get involved, we're going to get you connected to them as soon as possible. It's never too early to reach out to us. But we also have to be, if you're using some agent to purchase the property from, we also need to make sure we're keeping that in mind to make sure there's no conflict. The other thing I found is there's some markets which are really small for us. And, it's a town with a population of 50,000 and maybe we don't have an agent there. Sometimes the agent you purchased the property from has done a ton of leasing and they actually want to be your leasing agent. They don't want to do the property management, but they do the leasing. We can partner with them on that as well.
Amazing. And these leasing agents, there's also, I think, a feature and benefit in one of the plans that the leasing agent can go out and do annual inspections or quarterly inspections or whatever the investor wants for their property. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. We look for leasing agents that also have some property management experience and have done that. Whether currently doing it today, some of ours do full service management and they do this as well to complement their full service management. Others will say, I've done property management before. My brokerage is fine with me doing inspections. That's actually majority of ours. Like most will do annual inspections, and it's also for their benefit. When they release the property after 4 years, they don't want to go in there and find out that the person has a hoarding disability, right? They want to make sure the property is clean, maintained, both for you as well as for them. And so it's mutually beneficial for them to go out and do that. Other times owners will use their handyman to go out and just like check everything, fix things quickly, check faucets. Either one works, but I would say if you're not doing annual inspections, it's not good. Make sure you're always doing annual inspections.
Absolutely. So Dana, do most of the investors that use Hemlane, are they using Hemlane for properties owned locally or out of state or both?
Complete mixture, both. We have people who use them local. We have people who use Hemlane for remote properties. We have owners that have both. They have some that are local and some that are out of state. Again, it's not so important of where the property is. It's more so what management works well for you. And majority want to be somewhat hands-on, but they don't want to do everything. And from that perspective, Hemlane is a fantastic solution.
Amazing. For the investors that are watching that are really interested in partnering with Hemlane, what would be their next step?
So two things. One is visit our website. It's hemlane.com. You can kind of see it in the corner here, HEMLANE.com. You can also email me. So my email is Dana, DANA, at hemlane.com. So either one works, but you can go ahead and check us out. You can also check out locations where we're located, click locations at the top. And we are nationwide. So even if we don't have a leasing agent in the area, we can still service your property, even if the location's not there.
I actually think that that's how you got into Spokane. We made a lot of investors that were buying there. And I think at the time, this was a couple of years ago, you didn't have a leasing agent there. And then, quickly onboarded and found some great leasing agents there. And same with Oklahoma City also. So thank you for being with us where our investors are buying.
Yeah, exactly. We actually learn about new markets from investors who were like, wow, there's like 3 people going into this market right now. And we'll qualify and get, 3 to 4 agents in a city. And then we'll let you know if it's our first time working with them, but here's how qualified they are. And then go through and do weekly check-ins with you.
Amazing. And Dana, you are presenting live next week at our summit on day 1. It's noon Pacific time. So tell everyone a little bit about what you're presenting about and what they'll learn in your session.
Yeah, so the session is called Rules to Remote Landlording. And what that essentially means is there's a lot of people who say, oh, I would manage this property if it were close to me, but it's not, it's remote. And if you are considering saying, hey, I'm going to manage it, there are some fundamentals that you need to get set up and fundamentals that you need to know about property management in order to succeed. And it's different than a property that's down the street. There's different ways to work with people, collaborate, and to get things set up for success. And so that's really the focus of, if you are going to manage a property from afar, who do you need on the ground? What processes and procedures do you need set up? As well as what are some things that will come up that are really important for you to know? Tenants who know that the landlord's out of state and they're self-managing it, there's obviously some sort of, oh, what can I get by with potentially if you haven't screened your tenants properly? So certain things like that, which I'm really excited to share. And I'm really excited, Jennifer, for the summit next week.
Oh, us too. So for those that don't yet have your free ticket, we have a link in the comments. You guys can grab your free ticket, listen in on Dana's presentation on day 1. We have 3 full days of content. And again, grab your free ticket. It's going to be just jam-packed with powerful conversations from a lot of different experts. We're talking about mobile home parks. We're talking about remote investing. We're talking about house hacking, multifamily, build to rent. And so just a lot of topics, all related to building and scaling your portfolio. So again, Dana, so excited, so much looking forward to your presentation. And again, thanks for your time and being here today.
Great, thanks. And looking forward to the summit as well on my end.
Amazing. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and we will see you at the summit next week.